West Up. It's West Coast Wednesday. Before I get my West Coast Wednesday thought, I want to give a shout out to my boy Vince Ford. He dropped a book, The Leader That Society Didn't Choose. Again, that's The Leader That Society Didn't Choose by Vince Ford. Me and Vince Ford, we got IG Live on Monday, prayer calls on Thursdays, and we do a lot of different things in social spaces. That guy, my friend, check him out. People who are designed to enhance their leadership skills. This book is definitely going to do that. I looked at the chapters, which he calls tracks, because he loves music. I looked at his tracks and I'm just like excited about diving into it. I've read through to the interlude. That's what he calls his opening. It's just dope. I just love the way he opened it up and presented it as a way, as an album, right? And using David as David, who was a musician, right? So he's real clever with that. So appreciate you, Vince, man. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You're inspiring people, including myself, to do some things that we should have been doing, man. But you went out there and you did it. I'm proud of you. So with that being said, man, my West Coast Wednesday thought. My West Coast Wednesday thought comes from this particular sermon that I'll be doing on Sunday, right? Just so you'll know, I'll be speaking on Joseph. In order for me to understand Joseph, I felt like I need to understand his dad and his mom's relationship, and I also had to understand, Jacob's dad and his mom's relationship. And I wasn't gonna go all the way back to Abraham, so I started off with Isaac. And, I know the story, read through the story before, but this time, focused in on the fact that this family was filled with deceit. Isaac was a deceiver. His wife was a deceiver. And Jacob was a deceiver. His name didn't mean deceiver, even though you hear some people say that. His name didn't mean deceiver. I believe it meant hill grabber, right? So anyways, this family is steeped in deceit. And then when we think about Abraham was a deceiver as well, right? And so they were deceivers. So, keep that in mind. So you go and, Jacob goes and he goes to find his wife and ends up, having to marry Leah first because he was deceived, right? What's funny about that story is that, after he finished his 7 years, because he had to work 7 years, he said he would work 7 years in order to marry Raquel, who was Rachel, right? And so he said, I'll work 7 years in order to marry her. And Laban was like, okay, bet. After 7 years, you can marry her. Cool. Laban throws a party. He throws a feast. At this feast, they must have been real turned up, right? You can blame it on the alcohol, right? Because when Jacob woke up that next morning, he looked over at Leah. He didn't look at Rachel. He looked over at Leah, right? So that tells me that he got intoxicated, right? And he was like, oh man, like, what did you do? Like, you deceived me, right? And so Laban deceives him. And so, Laban's like, if you really want her, you got to finish your week with her. And then after your week with her, you can get Rachel too, but you're going to have to work an additional 7 years. So he was then deceived. And then Rachel would deceive her dad when they leave. Rachel would deceive her dad. She would take his idols, his gods, and she would sit on them and saying that she was on her cycle when she really wasn't. Deception everywhere is deception, right? And then they had these kids, right? First Leah has some kids, and and then after she has her kids, and Rachel gives her handmaid and all that story. This is all in the story. But then these kids, they go and they have deception in them. So they're deceivers as well. So, you look at their story, you see, wow, they deceived this whole town, and then they deceived their dad when they threw Joseph in a ditch, right? It's like deception all throughout their family. And it didn't start with the kids. So that's one thought. Another thought is that on the flip side, they knew God. They knew the God of Abraham and Isaac because of Jacob. So that also was passed down, a legacy with God. God blessed Jacob. God blessed his kids. God blessed, Isaac because of Abraham. So there's a legacy of blessing that passes on as well. Jacob was a dreamer. Jacob had dreams. Then who else had dreams? David had dreams. Not David. Joseph had dreams, right? Joseph was a dreamer. And so, that's a positive thing that's passed down as well. So basically, in my observation, one of the things that just stood out was the fact that there are some things that are passed down from generation to generation. Like if your kids see you do certain things, they just gonna do it, right? You don't want your kids to be. I'm quite sure Isaac didn't want his kids to be deceivers. He wasn't thinking if I do this, my kids are going to take on this characteristic or they're going to take on this trait. I'm quite sure that, Jacob didn't feel like, well, if I'm a deceiver, then my kids are going to do some reckless stuff and they're going to use deception as a way to do the things that they want to do. But it happens, right? So there are things that are negative that are passed down, but there are also things that are positive that are passed down. Either which way, you are passing down things to your children, right? So you want to be mindful. If you realize that there are some negative things about yourself that is not only in you, but you said, man, my family, that's an Eddington trait. That's what the Eddingtons do, or that's what the Pipkins do, right? The Pipkins do that. And so, that's a trait that, that's what we do. So, man, in my life, I have to notice those things so that when I start to see myself doing them, I can change and rearrange some things. But I have to acknowledge and understand what's going on with me. Why? If I don't, when I have kids, what's going to happen? Now my girl's acting like me. They're acting like Pipkins and Eddingtons and Joneses and Thomases and all these people because of things that have been passed down from generation to generation. And if you never stop those things from passing down, or at least acknowledge those things so that you can help them to navigate what they're going to struggle with it, because it's a part of who they're going to struggle with it. Help them navigate through that thing by understanding yourself, like, okay, I'm a deceiver. And my kids gonna have this in them. So I gotta watch them and I gotta teach them how to not be that. I have to show them things that I wasn't shown. I have to give them things that I didn't have. I have to show them another way. I have to show them how walking in the truth and walking in the light is better for them. I have to do that, right? Because if I don't, then they're just gonna pass it down to my grandkids, and then we're gonna have a legacy of people who were deceivers. And on the other side, when you see that your children have gifts that are, some of their same gifts. Not all of Jacob's kids had the gift that Joseph had of dreaming, right? And so when you see that this particular kid has this gift, and this particular kid has this gift, and this other, that you look at those gifts that God has given them, and you sow into that gift, and you highlight that gift, and you promote that gift, and you point them in a direction that they should go. You don't make them hide that gift. Because when you look at that story, man, when Joseph tells his dad about the gift or the dream that he had, he told him not to tell his brothers. And, granted, Joseph was coming from a wrong or evil place because he was coming from a place of pride. But if Joseph, had to hide his gift or bury his gift, he would have never been able to get out of his situation when he needed to use his gift in order to help the Pharaoh. So anyways, man, that's my West Coast Wednesday, man. Make sure that you are in tune with your past, your people's past, in tune with yourself, and in tune with your children, so that you can help them to navigate those things in those spaces, those things that you have, that you carried on from generations before, that you can help break those, what we call cycles, right? And you can give them a new legacy to start. A legacy that's rooted in healing, a legacy that's rooted in following their giftedness and their the things that God has given them to do, and not rooted in the Eddingtons and all that other stuff. Hope that makes sense, man. A little lengthy tonight, but that's it. As always, stay blessed, stay West.